Hello everyone! In this lesson, we will continue to work on the edit feature for our My Notes user interface. Let's dive right into the action. So here I am on the My Notes page, and in our previous lesson, we set things up so that when you first come to the page, you cannot click or edit either of the fields, the title or the body, but then as soon as you click the edit button, well, now you can make changes to the fields. And clicking edit also made this blue save button appear. Now, a bit later on in the lesson, we will set things up so that when you click save, we send off a post request to a REST API URL. But before we get to that, let's make one last improvement to the user interface. Because I don't want users to feel like their only option is to click save. So I think it would be nice if once you click the edit button, then it turns into a cancel button. And if you click the cancel button, then that would remove the animated border and also make it so these fields are read-only once again. So let's get started and begin writing JavaScript to make all of that happen. So over in our text editor, within our theme folder, let's look within JS modules and jump into My Notes.js. And within our edit note method, let's set things up so that once you click on the edit button, it turns into a cancel button. So back in our code, maybe right below this line where we create the this note variable, let's add a new line. And let's say this note, and then look inside the list item by using the jQuery method named find. And we can find the edit button by targeting a class named edit note. Okay, and then once we've selected that element, let's modify its HTML. So within these parentheses, add a pair of quotes. I'm going to use single quotes instead of double quotes, so that way I can use double quotes within this string of text that we're going to include here. And instead of typing out a bunch of HTML by hand, why don't we just copy and paste directly from our PHP template? What I mean by that is let's jump into page-mynotes.php, and if we scroll down to the list item for each note, here's the span that has a class of edit note, and why don't we just copy and paste the contents of this element? So we don't need the opening or closing span tags, but everything in between, in the middle. So basically the icon HTML and the word edit, let's copy that into our clipboard. And then back in our JavaScript, we want to modify the HTML for that element. So within these quotes, just paste in your clipboard. Only this time, let's change the word edit to say cancel. And let's change the icon from FA-pencil to FA-times. This will give us an X icon. Okay, now let's go ahead and save that. Okay, and when you first load the page, you cannot make changes to the fields, but then as soon as you click edit, cool, the fields become editable. But also we see that the edit button turned into a cancel button. Perfect. Now next, let's set things up so that if you click the button again, it should remove the animated border, make these text fields read-only once again, and switch the button from cancel back to edit once again. Now there are a lot of different ways you could code things to set that up, but let me show you how I would handle it. So back in our JavaScript, right below the edit note method, I would just create a brand new separate method named make note editable, parentheses, curly brackets. And then right below that, I would create another separate method named make note read only, parentheses, curly brackets. And then I would just move these three lines, these lines that are responsible for making the note editable, I would just cut those three lines and paste them into this brand new method. And then down within the make note read only method, we can just paste it in again, only now let's adjust it to make it the equal but opposite. So let's just go through these lines one by one. For the first line, let's edit the HTML of the edit button and put it back. So instead of saying cancel, it should say edit once again. And for the icon, instead of FA-times, let's say FA-pencil. Okay, then let's fix this line to make it the opposite, to make it read-only once again. So instead of removing the read-only attribute, we would want to add a read-only attribute. So to do that, instead of remove attr, let's just say attr as the method. And then within the parentheses, instead of only one argument, we would want two arguments. So the first argument is the name of the attribute, and then the second argument is the value that you want to assign to it. So basically, we're setting a read-only attribute to equal a value of read-only. It's weird, but trust me, it works. Okay, and then instead of adding a class of noteActiveField, which adds the animated border, the opposite of that would be to remove that class. Okay, and then finally, let's not forget about this third line. So this is the line of code that adds a class to the blue Save button that makes it visible. So the opposite of this would just be to remove that class. Okay, so now we've got these two equal but opposite methods. And now within our edit note method that fires every time you click on an edit button, we just need to alternate which one of these we call. So the first time edit note runs, maybe we want to run make the note editable. And then the second time this runs, we should run make read only. So that way you can keep alternating between edit and cancel, edit and cancel. So back within our edit note method, I'm just going to write an if statement. So if parentheses, curly brackets. And for the condition check, let's say if this note has a data attribute named state, and if it equals editable, then right here we will make things read-only. Else, otherwise, so right after this curly bracket, we'll say else, curly brackets, then we will make things editable. Now, there's nothing magical about the word state or editable. I made up both of those terms. The key point here is that I'm checking for a data attribute within the parent list item element. And I'm checking for a specific value. Okay, so now let's replace this comment. In order to make things read-only, we can simply call our read-only method. So this dot make note read only, parentheses to actually execute it. And then to make things editable, we can just call our other method, right? So this dot make note editable. Okay, and in order to reference our methods by saying this dot and then the method name, we want to be sure that the keyword this is pointing towards our main class or object. And to make sure that that's the case, we need to look into our event handler. So when the edit note gets clicked, this is what we're going to call in response. We want to be sure to add on at the end here, dot bind this. Otherwise, JavaScript will modify the value of this and set it to equal whatever element got clicked on. Okay, now before we save this, we need to make a couple of changes to our methods, our equal but opposite methods, in order to make things actually work. So for example, when you first come to the page, none of the list items are going to contain a data attribute named data state with a value of editable. So that means the first time you click edit, this is always going to evaluate to false. So the else will run, which will make things editable. And then after that has had a chance to run, we want to update that data attribute and actually set it to editable. So that way, if you click the edit button again, then this would evaluate to true, and then make read only would run. So basically down here within our make note editable method, let's add a new line and say this note, and let's give it a data attribute. The name of the attribute would be state or data dash state, right? So it matches this. And then for the second argument, we just say, let's set it to editable. All right, and then let's do an equal but opposite action down in the read only method. So add a new line, this note, we will add a data attribute, or I should say we will update a data attribute that's named state. And this time we will set it to equal cancel. Doesn't really matter what we set it to as long as it's different than editable. As long as it's different, then that will affect the true or false nature of our if check. Okay, and then our final edit before we save this and test it out is within these methods, if we are referencing something named this note, we need to make sure that that even exists within the context of the function, right? How does this function even know which this note we are talking about? So up here, when we first create the variable named this note, it will exist within the context of this edit note method. So then on this line and this line, when we are calling our other methods, within the parentheses, let's just pass along this note. So here as well, this note. Okay, and then down within the function definitions for those, let's include this note as a parameter. So let's do that down here as well. This note. Okay, and let's go ahead and save things now. So when I first come to the page, I can't make any edits. As soon as I click edit, cool, I can make whatever changes I want to. And then if I click the cancel button, perfect, that removes the borders, and once again, I cannot make any changes to the fields. All right, so now that we've completed our edit cancel switching feature, let's change gears and set things up so that when you click the blue save button, it actually sends off a request to the WordPress REST API, right? Because as of this moment, if I make changes to these fields, this data is not actually getting saved anywhere. So as soon as I refresh the page, the values go back to normal. So right now, let's set up a bit of JavaScript so that if you edit one of these fields and change the title, then all you need to do is click the save button to send it to the WordPress database. So back in our text editor, within our JavaScript, let's scroll up to the very top. And within our events method, let's be on the lookout for something new. Actually, to save some typing, we can actually just copy and paste and duplicate this line. Copy, paste. And on this new line, let's be on the lookout for an element that has a class of update note getting clicked, because this is the class for the blue save button. So when that gets clicked, then in response, let's fire off a function or method named update note. Okay, and now let's just go and create a method with this exact matching name. In order to save a ton of typing, let's just copy and paste our delete note method, right? Because that already contains the Ajax code with the secret nonce and the URL and the success and error. So let's just copy from here the beginning of delete note, and down here is the end of the delete note method. So I'm just going to copy that, and then right below it, paste it in to duplicate it. Let's change the name from delete note to update note. Okay, and the very first thing that I'm going to change is the type of request that I want to send out. The URL that we are sending a request to can stay exactly the same, but now instead of a delete request, I want to send a post request. All right, next, let's customize our success function. So back when we were deleting a post, this line of code made sense, right? We wanted to delete it from the page on the fly. But now, within the context of updating a post, we don't want that. So let's delete it. And instead, I think it would be cool if after you click save and the request is successful, I think that should just kick us out of edit mode and set things back to read only. So that way you have a little bit of feedback that your request was successful. So back in our code, within the success function, let's just say this dot make note read only. And just like before, if we are running this function, we need to tell it which note in particular to operate on. Now, within the context of our update note method, we've already defined the this note variable. So when we call make note read only within the parentheses, let's just pass along this note. Okay, and then finally, before we save this and test it out, we obviously need to send along a bit of data with our request, right? We need to send along the new updated title and the new updated body field, or I should say body content. So back in our JavaScript, the way that you can send data along with your request is to simply include a property named data. It doesn't matter where, but maybe right below this type line, let's include a new line and say data colon. And for now, let's just set it to a temporary X placeholder. And then maybe up here above the Ajax line, let's add a new line. And let's create a variable. We could name it whatever we want. I'm going to name it our updated post. And I'm going to set it to equal an object. Now, the WordPress REST API is looking for very specific property names. If you want to update the title, you need to match that exact name. Let's set that to X just as a placeholder. And if you want to update the main body content field, the REST API is expecting a property named content. Okay, now we don't actually want these placeholder X values. So for the title, we want to set that to equal whatever the value of this input field is. So to find that, instead of the X, let's say this note, and then look within that list item with the find method. And we're looking for the input field that has a class of note title field. And then we can get the value of that field by saying .val. Okay, then let's do the same thing for content. We want to find the value of this text area field. So instead of X, let's say this note find within the list item the text area that has a class of note body field, and then we want to grab the value of that element. Okay, so we've constructed this object named our updated post, and now that is the data that we want to send along with this request. So we just set data to equal the name of that variable, our updated post. Okay, now let's go ahead and save this and test it out. So if I refresh the page and click edit and say my new magical title and change the body to say math is so fun and then click save. Cool, so it must have been successful because you can see that now the fields are read-only again and the save button disappeared. And just for confirmation, if I check my Chrome console, we see congrats. And WordPress responds with information about the post that you just updated. So now, even if I refresh the page, we still see those same updated values because now they've been saved into the database. So we just successfully modified a post from the front end of our website. And we can jump into the admin dashboard and refresh our notes area. And we can see with our own eyes that yes, that post was indeed updated. So it's got the new title and it's got the new body content. Perfect. And that's going to bring this lesson to a close. In our next lesson, we will learn how to create brand new posts right from the front end. Because if we think back to the CRUD acronym, we know how to read data. Now we know how to update and delete data. So all that remains is how to create brand new data. And once we learn how to do that, we will be unstoppable. So let's keep things rolling, and I will see you in the next lesson.